Good morning. My name is Winnie Ng. I'm the chair of the Toronto Association for Democracy in China. And thank you very much for attending our media conference this morning. It's organized by Toronto Association for Democracy in China and Federation for a Democratic China. We are here this morning because we are gravely concerned about the safety of Dong Guangping. Dong Guangping is a former police officer and turned Chinese human rights activist and defendant. And he first spoke out seeking the truth about the Tiananmen Square massacre at its 10th anniversary. And since then, he had been persecuted and jailed 3 times for speaking out, for seeking the truth. We are here also today recognizing that after 31 months in hiding in Vietnam, Dong Guangping was now arrested on August the 24th of 2022 by the Vietnamese police. We have been working closely with our Canadian government, the Global Affairs colleagues, to find out where about Dong Guangping is. So the key purpose of today's press conference is we want to pose the questions to both the Vietnamese government and the Chinese government, where is Dong Guangping? And it's important to start taking that into considerations. If we use Martin Luther King's quote, "An injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere," then it's important today that we stand in solidarity with Dong Guangping's family, who came in 2015 after Dong Guangping was arrested in Thailand. So without further delay, there are 3 other speakers. Dong Guangping's daughter, Katharine Dong, will make a plea for the Vietnamese and Chinese government to confirm his whereabouts. And after the press conference, we'll be going to the Chinese and Vietnamese embassy, and Katharine will be delivering a personal appeal letter to the 2 ambassadors in Canada. So in terms of our speakers, it would be Katharine Dong, daughter of Dong Guangping, and then to be followed by Alex Neve, Senior Fellow, Graduate School of Public and International Affairs, University of Ottawa. And then last speaker is Jiaji Jiang, a board member of the Federation for Democracy, Democratic China. Okay, thank you. So I'll call on Katharine Dong.
Good morning. My name is Katherine. Today is November 17th, and tomorrow, November 18th, will be the 7th anniversary of my family coming to Canada. If my father hadn't been handed over by the Thai government on 2015, he should be celebrating with me too. I haven't seen my father, Dong Guangping, for 7 years, and I really miss him. 7 years ago, Canada agreed to resettle my parents and me as refugees. We were ready to begin a new life. That was snatched away from us on that very sad day in October 2015, when authorities in Thailand turned him over to Chinese officials. Before we knew it, he was back in China and was jailed for the 3rd time. Jailed not because he's a criminal, far from it. He was jailed because he believes in human rights and refuses to stay silent when rights are ignored and abused. He was born into a very wealthy military family. His father was a general, and his siblings are senior colonial ranks. So my father once was a soldier, and they became a police inspector for years. So he could have lived a decent, comfortable life, but he chose to give up this and fight for human rights, because he once said to me that he didn't want me to live in a country without human rights. And he wanted to fight for human rights for children like me. If I know anything about my father, it is these 3 things. he is committed to human rights. He loves his family, and he is a courageous survivor. So he survived another cruel 3.5 years in Chinese prison. He survived a desperate attempt to swim his way to freedom off the coast of China. He survived he survived hiding in Vietnam for 31 months, and he survived being hospitalized with COVID. He survived because the dream of being reunited with his family was so strong. And then again, that dream of freedom was snatched away from him and our family. So when I heard that my father has been arrested in handcuffs and with a black cloth over his head by a dozen police in Vietnam on August 24th, my heart broke. When the days went by and there was no news about him, I felt so helpless and deeply worried. And now, 86 days after he was arrested, 86 days of no news, and 86 days of disappearance. I want to hold on to hope, but I fear the worst. I was told by the Canadian government that they no longer have any news from Vietnamese officials about my father. Why would they refuse to say where he is? Why would they refuse to tell us if he's okay? Why would they refuse to let him travel to Canada and be reunited with his family? Is it because Vietnam has handed my father over to China? That is what I fear. And I know that in China he will face more persecution, more mistreatment, more injustice, and more time in prison. All because he defends human rights, and that is why I'm making this public plea today on behalf of my family and my father. It is an appeal to both the government of Vietnam and the government of China as a Canadian citizen. To those two governments, please tell me where my father is. Please allow the Canadian government to visit him immediately. And please let him come to Canada without any further delay and be reunited with us. Dong Guangping belongs with his family. This was our dream 7 years ago, and it is still our dream today. Canada is now his home because this is where his family is. Please let Dong Guangping come to Canada. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jiaji Jiang. I'm a member of the Federation for Democratic China. Today, I came here to support Katharine. Like Katharine, I felt the same deep pain when Communist China took Katharine's father away from her. Because, like Mr. Dong Guangping, my father was also a prisoner of conscience in China. He had been in jail for 22 years. Katharine and I both were 15 when Communist China took our father away. For now, I still have a hope that I can reunite with my father. But for Katharine, her hope for reuniting with her father become unknown. Since Mr. Dong Guangping had gone missing again in August, and we fear that the Chinese government had kidnapped her father from Vietnam again, like what they did back in 2015 in Thailand, and brought him back to China again. We don't know what Communist China will do to her father this time. But we do know right now it is a very, very urgent time for the Canadian government to act to save and rescue Mr. Dong Guangping. If the Canadian government doesn't act fast and now, it could be very, very difficult for Katharine to reunite with her father ever again. And please remember that Katharine is only 22 years old. Are we really going to sit and watch this young girl who has been forcibly separated from her father for 7 years wait another 7 years or more? And thank you, everyone here, for appeal Canada government to helping and saving Mr. Dong Guangping from Communist China.
I'm Alex Neve, a senior fellow at the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs at the University of Ottawa. As you've heard, no one has seen Dong Guangping for almost 3 months now, 86 days. And while the Canadian government did initially have some information through their own channels suggesting that he was probably still in Vietnam, they too have now had no reports, no information about his whereabouts or his fate for at least the last 4 weeks. Vietnam has refused to provide any confirmation as to what has happened to Dong Guangping. The simple question, where is he? The essential question, is he safe and in good health? Is he still in Vietnam? Or, as Katharine has indicated, is the family's fear, has he been returned again to China? Vietnam's refusal to provide information deepens the fear about his fate. It is therefore absolutely vital that Vietnam share full information with his family, and they do so now. Similarly, the government of China should confirm whether or not he is now in their custody. Whichever government has Dong Guangping at this time, Canadian government officials and representatives of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees should be given immediate access to him. He should be released from detention immediately, and he should be allowed to travel to Canada finally, 7 years after that was the initial plan, so that he can at long last be reunited with his family here. Dong Guangping's passionate belief in human rights and his deep love for his family has taken him far, and it has helped him survive tremendous persecution and hardship. Now is the time for justice. Now is the time for him to be allowed to be with his family here in their new home in Canada. Thank you. Those are our comments, and we'd certainly be ready to take any questions.
We will start with questions in the room, and for those online, you may use the raise hand function. We'll get to you shortly. First question in the room.
Jim Bronskill, the Canadian Press. Whoever would like to field this one. What can Canada do in this context, if anything, to assist the family?
I think we've been very heartened to see a strong response from the Canadian government. It is our understanding that it is being raised regularly at senior levels of exchange right now, including, it's our understanding, both the Prime Minister and Minister Joly have raised it forcefully in a number of exchanges while they've both been in Southeast Asia over the last several days. We don't know the outcome of those exchanges. I think that's encouraging for all of us. It's certainly encouraging for the family. And I think it's vital that that continues. This needs to be lodged at the highest levels of exchange between Canada and both Vietnam and China. It's obviously a slight, to say the least, that Vietnam at this point in time is refusing to provide any information to the Canadian government as to his whereabouts. We have a relationship with Vietnam, an important relationship, a trading relationship, a bilateral relationship. It is not okay and is quite a diplomatic slap that Canada is being treated this way by Vietnam. So that pressure needs to be sustained. As well, Canada should be recruiting as many other governments as possible to assist in that pressure on both Vietnam and China.
Just a supplement. We'll also be initiating a letter writing campaign encouraging Canadians from all backgrounds to write to the Vietnamese government and the Chinese government, pushing on the whereabouts of Dong Guangping and ask for his release to be rejoined with the family.
Thank you.
I have a question for Alex and for Katharine. Alex, if you wouldn't mind, first, I was just wondering what you thought of the similarities between Mr. Dong Guangping's situation and another Uyghur Canadian detained in China, Mr. Shalil. Can you draw parallels between that? Are they similar, and do you have similar concerns at all?
I think Hussein Shalil's case is a very foreboding reminder to us of what's at stake here. Similarly, he was in a neighboring country. He was in Uzbekistan back in 2006 when he was arrested by Uzbeki officials, and he too was summarily deported back to China. And of course, now 16 years later, he remains behind bars, and Canada has no access to him. So I think that's a very chilling illustration of what's at stake here. And we know that's not an exceptional occurrence. Obviously, this happened to Dong Guangping himself back in 2015 when he was summarily arrested and deported back to China from Thailand. There are other cases throughout Southeast Asia, another case with strong Canadian connections, the case of Dr. Wang Benjiang, who was abducted and returned from Vietnam also to China over 20 years ago, and he remains behind bars. So I think those cases highlight to us that there's a great deal at stake here. This is not just a diplomatic disagreement. The fate, the well-being, and potentially the liberty of a man for many years to come is at stake, and that's why it's so critical that Canada continue to give this top attention.
Do you have a sense of how many Canadians or how many Chinese human rights defenders with Canadian ties are currently imprisoned in China right now?
I don't have that information. We certainly know it's been a concern in the past. I think one of the realities is it's often very difficult to get clear statistics. But certainly, I think Canadians know, we had, of course, the illustration of the two Michaels as well, a different context, but similarly, China punitively using detention powers to violate human rights is a common occurrence. And these kinds of cases illustrate to us that it's not just happening halfway across the world. These cases have echoes back here in Canada as well.
Dominating this. Katharine, would you mind answering a question about what your life has been like without your father? You came in 2015, you were a teenager. When you haven't seen him for that length of time, how do you keep in touch with him, and how do you and your mother maintain hope?
So I came here to Canada on 2015 when I was 15 years old. I went to high school and graduated here. I became a Canadian citizen this July. I shared everything to my father, and he was so proud of me. And when he knew that I've become a Canadian citizen, he was so relieved, and he saw that he would come to here very soon. So we were having such strong hope that he should reunited with us this year, but this tragedy happens, and because there were so many human rights fighters living in East Asian countries, and all of their families holding such huge hope that they will be reunited. So I wanted, as a Canadian citizen, I want my country, my government to be strong, to be tough, to support families like us, and to rescue our fathers, our relatives. Thank you.
Hi, next question from here. to Alex, please, or anyone else who may know more about this. Prime Minister have been in South Asia during the week, and you said that you've been in touch with the senior officials. Has this case been a conversation point, do you think? Are you aware of that?
We have been told and are confident that it is the case that both the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs have raised the case at some combination of the various summits they've been attending. There's, of course, has been the ASEAN, G20, and now APEC summits. We don't have details as to what that included. We don't know if it was Vietnamese and Chinese officials that were approached. It's our understanding that it was both governments. We are told that it was forceful, and I think that's very encouraging to hear. So that's very important that that has happened. This was an incredible opportunity to have those many gatherings in just a few short days involving senior representatives of both Vietnam and China. And it's now our hope and expectation that that's going to continue. There's clearly going to be a need for a longer term strategy here with respect to both Vietnam and China. And Canada needs to make it absolutely clear at a minimum to both of those countries that no answers is not acceptable. That at a minimum, Canada demands and needs answers to that very simple question, where is he?
And can you maybe tell us a bit more about your exchanges with the embassies here as well, other than the planned conversation that Katharine is going to have with them?
Well, this will be our first opportunity for the family to have exchanges with either the Vietnamese or Chinese embassies. We'll see what the welcome is. It's certainly our hope that they will be willing to personally receive her very personal appeal letter, and that will have some impact and that they will respond. We do know that the Canadian government is also in regular exchanges with both embassies, and it's our hope. We don't know details, but that the Canadian government is directly raising it with both ambassadors.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. If that's
I don't have any other questions online, but if there's any other questions in the room, we can do that now.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for being with us today. And certainly, if there's any interest in follow-up interviews or questions, we're all available. Thank you.